Greetings and welcome to the channel for Sleepy Science. We'll be taking a leisurely stroll through the serene and age-old world of trees tonight. A world of silent development, innumerable patience, and secrets concealed behind leaves and bark. The usual sights of the oaks, pines, and maples that we see on a daily basis surround us. However, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Some of the trees we see, with deeper roots than we can comprehend, have endured for thousands of years. One day, a tiny sapling might grow to tower over unbuilt cities, and we might not be able to hear the soft rustle of leaves. We see trees every day, yet they never cease to amaze us. They are both commonplace and remarkable. I encourage you to like, subscribe, or leave a brief remark if you appreciate my introspective musings. One drowsy soul at a time, it guides others to this place as well. For now, though, you just need to relax, find a place to call home, and let the forest's peace carry you. Let's get started. Discover the rich history of the trees. Trees have been on Earth for a much longer time than people have. You are touching something that links you to a lineage that dates back millions of years when you stand next to an old tree and press your hand against its rough bark. Long before the first people, long before mammals roamed the earth, and even before dinosaurs dominated the ancient continents, trees first appeared on our globe. Around 385 million years ago, during the Devonian epoch, the first plants that resembled trees appeared. They started the process of changing the Earth's surface, but they were odd compared to contemporary trees because they lacked actual leaves and flowers. Forests grew throughout the continents over millions of years, generating the oxygen-rich atmosphere that would eventually support sophisticated life. Today, to stroll among trees is to stroll among the offspring of the globe's first outstanding landscape architects, the living things that radically altered the planet. For thousands of years, trees have shaped the very air we breathe. The amount of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere was far lower before forests blanketed the continent than it is now. As they absorbed sunlight, early plants, including the progenitors of trees, started the gradual process of photosynthesis, dividing water molecules and producing oxygen. This process sped up significantly as forests grew. By converting carbon dioxide into the oxygen that human lungs need to breathe, trees evolved into planetary engines. Large swamp forests created so much oxygen during the Carboniferous epoch, some 300 million years ago, that the atmosphere held even more of it than it does today. In such an oxygen-rich environment, giant insects flourished. Dragonfly oxygen-richness dragonflies have hawk-sized wingspans. Eventually, the old woods gave way and were crushed into the coal deposits that we currently mine. Every breath we take carries the memory of trees that existed and perished hundreds of millions of years ago. The oxygen molecules we rely on still carry their memory. The oldest surviving trees have witnessed thousands of years of human history. Twisted bristlecone pines cling to rocky hillsides in the California mountains where few other plants can thrive. Over 5,000 years have passed since some of these ancient sentinels first appeared. The Egyptian pyramids were already ancient when they underwent construction. They silently watched civilizations rise and fall. Innumerable human generations lived their brief lives far below, as languages were created and then forgotten. Methuselah is a tree that is almost 5,000 years old, but its precise location is kept a secret to preserve it. Humans were just starting to learn to write when the first ring of growth in Methuselah occurred. A year of surviving drought, wind, and the steady march of time is symbolized by each ring in its gnarled bristlecone trunk. Standing next to such a tree is like feeling the weight of history and realizing how short our human life is in comparison to these living witnesses' patient perseverance. In hostile environments, gnarled bristlecone pines flourish. Most plants are unable to survive. Comfortable, rich valleys are not the ideal habitat for these old trees. At high elevations, when conditions are harsh, they instead cling to the sides of mountains. The air is thin, the growing season is short, bristlecone hort, and the soil is poor. But the reason they survive so long is because of these tough environments. Bristlecone pines grow very slowly under harsh conditions, sometimes gaining less than 1 inch in breadth over the course of a century. Their wood is extremely dense and resistant to disease, pests, and rot because of its sluggish growth. The harsh conditions that seem to threaten them actually protect the bristlecone pines by reducing competition from faster-growing species with shorter lifespans. Their twisted, worn bodies tell stories of survival in the face of adversity. While shielded areas still have tufts of green needles, branches on the windward side may be scraped bare and reduced to polished silver wood. They are sculptures made by hardship and time, demonstrating that sometimes the most resilient life emerges from the most trying circumstances. There are trees that are so big that you can walk through them. Giant sequoias. Bristlecone sequoias and coast redwoods grow to unfathomable proportions in California woodlands. General Sherman, the largest sequoia, is 275 feet tall and has a base diameter of more than 36 feet. With a total volume of more than 52,000 cubic feet, it is the largest living thing on Earth in terms of volume. Due to the size of some fallen redwoods, roads were carved out of them, allowing cars to pass through their giant trunks. There are occasions when even standing trees develop hollow spots big enough to walk through. Over generations, natural tunnels developed. Standing at the base of such a colossus and craning your neck upward toward its distant peak seems marvelously small. You are reminded that the scale of nature's creation dwarfs that of human accomplishment. Living cathedrals are these trees. The mist obscured their canopies. They are calming and humble in their presence. Redwoods along the coast can reach heights of over 300 feet. The tallest living objects on Earth are the California coast redwoods. The current record holder, a tree called Hyperion, is taller than the Statue of Liberty from base to torch, reaching 380 feet into the sky. At these heights, the tree's top and base are in distinct worlds. The forest is dark and silent close to the ground, with the enormous trunks rising into the shade like columns. However, sunlight rushes through needles at the top, hundreds of feet above the ground, dancing in winds that are invisible to us below. With ferns, mosses, and even tiny trees growing in the accumulated soil on the enormous branches, these upper reaches are home to their own ecosystems. When scientists scale these canopies, they find whole living populations that are never in contact with the Earth. Because of California's coastal climate, where fog frequently drifts inland, redwoods can grow to such heights. In addition to the water drawn up from roots far below, the tree's needles have the ability to actively absorb moisture. To understand the silent force that permeates every tree, one must picture the roughly 400-foot ascent of water molecules from soil to leaf. Thousands of species can coexist with a single oak tree. Trees are whole worlds in and of themselves, not isolated species. Hundreds, or possibly thousands of different species rely on a mature oak tree in a forest in North America or Europe for food and habitat. Birds are fed by the innumerable caterpillars that are fed by its leaves. Invertebrates, such as spiders and beetles, can be found in its bark. Woodpeckers, deer, squirrels, and jays are all supported by its acorns. In an age-old association, fungi grow alongside their roots, sharing nutrients. Its branches and trunk are colonized with lichens and mosses. Owls, bats, and nesting birds find a home in the cavities in its wood. Even dead oaks are still able to sustain life because they are gradually broken down by insects and fungi, which releases nutrients into the soil. No oak tree is ever by itself. Every one of them is a community, a living apartment complex that offers refuge and nourishment to an overwhelming variety of life. An entire ecosystem which took decades or centuries to establish and cannot be readily reproduced, is protected when one old tree is preserved. Trees use underground fungal networks to communicate. Mycorrhizae, which resemble thread-like fungal filaments, entwine with tree roots beneath the forest floor, out of sight. By expanding the reach of their roots and assisting them in absorbing nutrients and water from the soil, these fungi collaborate with trees. In return, trees give the fungi carbohydrates that are made by photosynthesis. However, this network does more than just allow fungi and trees to share resources. Scientists refer to this network of connections between trees as the wood wide web. Trees can exchange resources by providing nutrients to neighbors that are in need through these fungal networks. Through subsurface connections, a mature tree may share carbon with neighboring saplings, keeping them alive. In order to alert their neighbors to insect attacks or environmental stress, trees can even send chemical messages over the network. An interconnected community is what looks to be a group of people above ground, assisting and interacting with one another in ways that we are still learning about. The forest is a living network interwoven beneath the soil, not a collection of isolated organisms. Through mutual fungal ties, mother trees raise their young. Some big, old trees in forests act as hubs in the subterranean network, which is linked to dozens or even hundreds of other trees. These trees, which scientists refer to as mother trees, are essential to the health of forests. According to research, mother trees preferentially provide nutrients to their own children after identifying them through chemical cues in the fungal network. In order to increase the chances of survival for its genetic offspring, a mature tree may decrease the flow of nutrients to unrelated seedlings while increasing flow to its bone relatives. Mother trees also contribute to the regulation of the forest community, promoting resource sharing in favorable conditions and preserving the health of the network. As if making a final investment in the future of the forest, a mother tree that is hurt or dying frequently gives its neighbors, especially its young, a final burst of nutrients. Our concept of forests has changed as a result of these discoveries, moving from groups of rival individuals to cooperative societies in which the oldest members actively assist the youngest. Trees are able to alert one another to insect attacks. An insect attack does not cause a tree to suffer in quiet. Numerous species emit chemical messages into the atmosphere as well as through their root systems. In order to make themselves less appetizing or even poisonous to the incoming insects before they reach them, nearby trees recognize these cues and react by releasing protective substances in their own leaves. Researchers have discovered that trees connected by subterranean fungal networks will increase their chemical defenses, as will trees located downwind of an assault tree. Some of these protective substances are extremely complex. Some trees have the ability to detect the saliva of insects that consume their leaves and create substances that are specifically designed to discourage that species. Others basically call for assistance by releasing volatile compounds that draw in predators of the insects assaulting them. We cannot hear the chemical conversations that abound in the forest. Responses and warnings are moving via the earth and air. What appears to be a peaceful, placid group of plants is actually a vibrant society that is constantly defending itself and communicating. Certain trees emit compounds that have an impact on people's health and emotions. Science is starting to figure out why people who walk in forests tend to feel more at ease and content. Phytoncides are organic molecules released into the atmosphere by many trees, particularly conifers. By shielding the trees from insects, fungi, and bacteria, these compounds benefit the trees. However, these substances can have quantifiable impacts on our physiology and emotions when inhaled by people. According to studies, phytoncides can improve immune system performance, lower blood pressure, and decrease stress hormones. Shinrin-yoku phytoncides, Shinrin-yoku, or woodland bathing, is a practice that was created in Japan especially to capitalize on these advantages, in ways that metropolitan settings cannot match. Spending time in the company of trees and breathing the chemically enhanced air they provide seems to improve health. In addition to being enjoyable to be in, the forest has therapeutic properties that work at the molecular level. Every breath we take in the presence of trees contains substances that could be subtly promoting our health. Presence from the surrounding trees. The rings of a tree reveal the tale of its life. A tree's trunk displays a pattern of concentric rings when it is felled. These rings are more than just a simple tally of years, with each one signifying a single year of progress. They are a wood-bound biography. Years with favorable conditions with lots of water and warmth are indicated by wide rings. Difficult years of cold or drought are indicated by narrow rings. Where the tree was harmed by fire, illness, or physical trauma is shown by scars in the rings. Scientists can reconstruct climate conditions from centuries or even millennia ago by examining these patterns. Records of past volcanic eruptions that cooled the earth, droughts, and even human influences on the environment are preserved by ancient trees. The study of tree rings, or dendrochronology, has been used to date historic structures, confirm historical accounts, and determine how Earth's climate has evolved throughout time. Every ring represents a page in a book, and when combined, they create tales that are longer than a person's lifespan. The slow growth of wood preserves history, and reading tree rings is like reading history itself. The information that trees record in their wood varies, depending on the season. A tree grows a new ring of growth every year, but it is not consistent. Cells are bigger and the wood is lighter in the spring, when there is an abundance of water and growth is quick. This produces each ring's light section. The darker part is caused by smaller, denser cells that form as growth slows down in late summer and fall. These form a single annual ring when combined, but differences within and across rings reveal much more. A dramatic narrowing halfway through a ring could be an indication of a summer drought. It is possible for an injury to leave a scar around which later rings grow. While trees in tropical climes, where seasons are less defined, may have more subtle or irregular ring patterns, trees growing in seasonal climates exhibit these patterns clearly. Scientists can even identify instances of pollution or shifts in the makeup of the atmosphere by looking at rings at the microscopic level. A tree's wood is an archive that captures conditions, events, and changes with amazing accuracy and fidelity in addition to time. Certain trees have the ability to replicate themselves and survive for tens of thousands of years. Some trees have managed to attain a new form of immortality, even though individual tree trunks may survive for centuries or even millennia. By producing new shoots that are genetically identical to the parent tree, some species are able to reproduce through their root systems. Underground, these clones stay connected, pooling resources to create what is essentially a single creature. Pando, a quaking aspen clonal colony in Utah, is the most well-known example. A vast root system connects what looks to be a forest of 47,000 separate trees to form a single creature. Po is the heaviest known living creature, weighing an estimated 13 million pounds. Even more astonishingly, Individual stems only last roughly 130 years before being replaced, but the root system may be as old as 80,000 years. By continuously regenerating itself, Po has withstood cold ages, innumerable fires, and drastic changes in the environment. It serves as a live reminder of the period when mammoths roamed North America. These clonal colonies demonstrate that organisms can endure in ways that go beyond the confines of a single body, blurring the boundaries between individual and community, life and continuity. Trees with mainly hollow interiors can live. As the heartwood of old trees gradually deteriorates, hollow trunks are common. Although many trees survive and even flourish with significant hollowing, one may assume that this would kill them. Knowing the structure of trees is the key. The outer layers of a tree are its living, working components. The cambium, or Shinrin-yoku, where new growth takes place, directly beneath the bark itself, which offers protection, and the sapwood, which carries nutrients and water. The center's heartwood is already dead tissue that mainly provides structural support. The heartwood of trees can deteriorate with age without immediately endangering the tree's existence. The outer shell keeps expanding, gaining new wood every year. Certain trees turn into living cylinders with hollow centers that can still sustain enormous crowns of branches and leaves. With chambers big enough to house animals, these hollow trees frequently offer valuable habitat. Even after losing its heart, a tree can still grow, breathe, and reach the sky, as well as provide shelter for the forest community that depends on it. It serves as a reminder that even when we believe the core has been lost, life and power can endure. The trunks of baobab trees have the capacity to hold thousands of gallons of water. Baobab trees have adapted to live in regions with little rainfall and a lot of dryness in the savannas of Africa, Madagascar, and Australia. They came up with an amazing solution. They develop enormous trunks that frequently swell to astonishing sizes, with sparse branches that resemble roots and extend upward. This odd shape has a purpose. Thousands of gallons of water can be stored in the trunk's spongy wood storage tank. Baobabs absorb and store as much water as they can during the rainy season. They then gradually deplete these reserves over the protracted dry months. Some baobabs may endure for years without rain because of how well they store water. This has long been known by the locals, who occasionally tap baobabs for water during dry spells by making tiny holes in them to release the liquid that has been stored. These trees are biological reservoirs that have evolved to one of the harshest conditions on Earth, making them living wells. Their purpose is reflected in their peculiar appearance. The needs of surviving in environments where water is limited and valuable have affected every element of their shape. Underwater, underwater, underwater. Some plants can survive for months. Some tree species have evolved to flooding that would kill their relatives, but most trees need air around their roots to survive. In wetlands across the southeast United States, old cypress trees can withstand prolonged submersion of their knee roots. Pneumatophores, also known as knees, are specialized root structures that emerge from submerged roots and rise above the water's surface. The tree can breathe even when standing in still water because of these knees, which help carry oxygen to the roots that are immersed. This adaptability has been further enhanced by mangrove trees, which are found along tropical coastlines. Different mangrove species employ different tactics. Some have vertical breathing roots that resemble cypress knees, while others have roots that arch above the water's surface to obtain air. Where fresh water meets the salt water, mangroves can flourish because some of them can even filter salt from the sea. By bridging the gap between land and water, these trees produce distinctive ecosystems that act as storm barriers and fish nurseries. They serve as a reminder that trees have adapted to almost every type of environment on Earth, overcoming obstacles that most other plants would find impossible. Coastlines are shielded from erosion and storms by mangrove trees. Mangrove woods' intricate root systems serve purposes beyond only ensuring the survival of individual trees. They give coastlines all throughout the world vital protection. Because of the thick root system's ability to halt wave action, erosion is lessened and sediment can settle and build up. Mangrove forests serve as natural barriers during tsunamis and hurricanes. Wave energy is absorbed and dispersed by their interconnecting roots and flexible trunks. Compared to communities where mangroves have been removed, those with intact mangrove forests experience substantially less damage from coastal storms. In addition to providing physical protection, mangrove trees enhance water quality, filter pollutants out of it, and provide habitat for a wide variety of species. Mangrove forests are among the most prolific ecosystems on Earth because their roots provide a home for young fish, shrimp, and crabs. Mangrove forests have been extensively cut down for coastal development in spite of these advantages. Conservation initiatives for shrimp farming increasingly acknowledge that preserving mangroves benefits human societies by offering services that no man-made structure can completely replace. These lowly trees, whose roots are in salt water, act as guardian forests, preserving the area where land and sea meet. The majority of the oxygen we breathe is produced by trees. Many people believe that rainforests, especially the Amazon, are the Earth's lungs. The majority of the oxygen on Earth is really produced by phytoplankton in the oceans, even if trees do create a significant quantity of oxygen through photosynthesis. Trees still play a vital role in the atmosphere, though, and their contribution goes beyond just producing oxygen. One of the main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, is absorbed by trees, which then release oxygen into the atmosphere and store the carbon in their wood. A fully grown tree can release enough oxygen to sustain 2 people each year while absorbing roughly 48 pounds of carbon dioxide. By storing carbon that might otherwise contribute to climate change, forests collectively serve as carbon sinks. This stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere when forests are burned or cleared for development. In addition to gas exchange, trees can influence climate through evapotranspiration, and evapotranspiration, which release water vapor that cools the atmosphere and affects rainfall patterns. By manipulating local and even regional climates, they establish the specific circumstances required for trees to survive. Trees don't only exist in their surroundings, they actively build and preserve it. Through transpiration, rainforests generate a large portion of their own rainfall. In addition to receiving vast amounts of rainfall, tropical rainforests also produce a significant amount of it. Transpiration is the mechanism by which trees draw water from the soil and release it through their leaves. The continuous transpiration of billions of trees in a vast rainforest releases enormous amounts of water vapor into the atmosphere. In the Amazon, this fluid rises, cools, condenses into clouds, and then descends once more as rain. According to studies, the forest uses this cycle to produce around half of its own rainfall. In a self-reinforcing system, the trees provide the rain that keeps the forest that produces the rain alive. Accordingly, deforestation involves more than just the removal of trees. In fact, it can lessen rainfall over wide areas, which could turn rainforests into drier environments. As partners, the rain and the trees rely on one another. Removing the forest could disrupt a cycle that has endured for millions of years and result in the loss of the rain itself. Rainfall isn't the only reason the jungle is damp. Because there is a rainforest there, it rains. There are billions of creatures in a sample of dirt taken from the forest floor. A whole world is in your hands when you take up a scoop of forest soil. In addition to hundreds of larger species like nematodes and arthropods, the tiny sample contains billions of bacteria, millions of fungal cells, and thousands of protozoa. There are more organisms in this soil ecosystem than we can easily recognize or quantify, making it incredibly diverse and complicated. These creatures recycle nutrients and make them available for trees to consume by decomposing dead wood, fallen leaves, and other organic debris. In addition to shielding plants from diseases and forming symbiotic connections with roots, they also have an impact on soil structure, giving good forest soil its loose, rich texture. The existence of forests would be impossible without this subterranean society. Over millions of years, soil organisms and trees have co-evolved, each influencing the other. Despite appearing to be just plain soil, the forest floor is filled with life that is always changing. Every step you take in a forest is a step across an invisible city, a bustling metropolis of microscopic life that is constantly striving to keep everything in order. In a never-ending cycle, fallen leaves replenish the soil with nutrients. In temperate forests, trees drop their leaves in a flurry of crimson, orange, and gold as fall approaches. These falling leaves are a gift to the forest floor rather than waste. All of the nutrients that the tree absorbed from the soil to make them are released and re-available as they break down. Numerous elements, including potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen, cycle from soil to tree to leaf and back again. Important participants in this cycle are decomposers, which include the bacteria, fungi, and invertebrates that decompose dead organic materials. Without them, the forest would progressively grow poorer since nutrients would be trapped in decaying wood and falling leaves. Death, however, is constantly feeding life with them. Things do not grow in a forest until they die. It is a location where growth is continuously reverted to death, where there are always new starts after endings. In a forest, the blanket of leaves underfoot is a nursery rather than a graveyard, where the leaves of yesterday are feeding the trees of the future, the future. To survive, some trees lose all of their leaves, severe seasons. Many trees have developed a remarkable survival strategy in areas with harsh dry seasons or frigid winters. They go into dormancy until the right circumstances arise again, dropping all of their leaves at once. When photosynthesis would be impossible, or leaf maintenance would be too expensive, trees can live thanks to their deciduous habit. The energy needed to keep leaves alive would outweigh any benefits in cold locations, where they would freeze and get damaged. When soil moisture is limited in tropical places with significant seasonality, removing leaves during the dry season minimizes water loss. Trees frequently remove important nutrients from their leaves before they fall, decomposing chlorophyll and other substances and storing the nutrients in their roots and trunk. Autumn leaves change color for this reason. When the green chlorophyll is eliminated, the oranges and yellows that were always present become visible. The bare branches of the winter or dry season are not dead. Rather, they are waiting, conserving energy and persevering until it is time to grow again, even though the breakdown of other compounds occasionally results in brilliant reds. Every spring, cherry blossoms only bloom for a short time. Sakura, or cherry tree blossoming, is a hugely significant cultural occasion in Japan. People congregate to admire the blossoms, acknowledge their beauty, and consider how short life is. The blooms fade after just a week or two, a fleeting burst of beauty that disappears nearly as quickly as it appears. The essence of their meaning lies in their transient nature. Cherry blossoms serve as a reminder that life is fleeting and that beauty is ephemeral, which is why every moment is valuable. From a biological point of view, The short bloom is a calculated move. Cherry trees make sure their blossoms are visible to pollinators and are not obscured by foliage by blooming before leaves appear. Additionally, the rapid flowering lessens the chance that late spring storms would harm the blooms. But their conciseness has a deeper meaning than just strategy. The blossoms are more vivid and valuable when one knows they will soon be gone. They educate us to be grateful for the present because it won't last forever. It is precisely because they are endings that the falling petals floating through the spring air like snow are so lovely. The first flowers on certain trees may not appear for decades. Some species of cherry trees are incredibly patient, but they bloom when they are young. For example, certain bamboo species can grow for decades or even over a century without flowering. Regardless of local conditions, when a species does bloom, it is common for all individuals to flower at the same time throughout broad regions. The plants die after flowering and seeding, occasionally falling across large areas all at once. There is still some mystery about this synchronized flowering, perhaps an evolutionary tactic to ensure that at least some seeds survive to germinate by overwhelming seed predators with sheer numbers. Certain agave and palm plants are among the other slow-blooming species. Despite its name, the century plant usually takes 10 to 30 years to flower, but that's still a long period. Throughout its life, the plant accumulates resources and energy for a single stunning flowering stalk that can reach a height of 20 feet or more. Before it dies, it will have produced thousands of flowers. A life lived in anticipation of a single flowering moment, this postponed reproduction is a gamble. It serves as a reminder that patience may be a powerful tactic and that not all improvement is obvious. In order to persuade animals to disperse their seeds, fruit trees developed their sweetness. There is a reason why we appreciate apples, oranges, cherries, and so many other fruits. They are ads for evolution. Trees cannot move to spread their seeds since they are meant to be eaten. Many people have developed a relationship with animals. Birds, mammals, and other animals are drawn to them because of the tasty, nutrient-dense flesh they use to package their seeds. Animals usually swallow the seed whole when they consume the fruit. The seed, frequently accompanied by a handy package of fertilizer, is later dropped by the animal in its droppings after it has moved away from the parent tree. For certain seeds to successfully germinate, they must pass through an animal's digestive tract. The voyage weakened their hard coverings. Fruit sweetness serves as an evolutionary signal to other species, inviting them to take part in the tree's reproduction. Trees and their animal companions have influenced one another over millions of years. The plants are producing increasingly appealing fruits, the digestive systems and changing tastes of the animals that consume those fruits. Every apple you eat is proof of this long-standing alliance, a sugar-written treaty between animals and trees. It is possible for seeds to lie dormant for decades or even centuries. Seeds are life-giving time capsules that are only waiting for the appropriate time to sprout. While some seeds sprout within a few days or weeks of being dropped, others may lie dormant in the ground for a very long time. They wait for the precise circumstances that cause germination, often for decades. In uncertain situations, this tactic makes sense. An entire generation could be wiped out in a single poor year if all the seeds emerged at once. Trees hedge by distributing germination across time. It has been reported that certain seeds can survive for centuries. In the most extreme instance, researchers were able to successfully sprout a 2,000-year-old date palm seed. The seedling, which was found in an old Israeli castle, developed into a robust plant and established a direct link between the present and the past. Seeds can withstand burying, cold, drought, and fire. They waited for their moment to come with patience that was quite unthinkable. In a shell, they are hope. Potential life silently waits in the dark until circumstances indicate that the time has arrived. In fact, fire aids in the regeneration and reproduction of certain trees. Many tree species have evolved to not only withstand fire, but to employ it, despite the common perception that fire is only harmful. A number of conifers, including lodgepole pines and jack pines, develop serotinous cones that stay closed for years or even decades. The resin used to seal the cones only melts under the extreme heat of fire. These cones open and scatter their seeds upon ash-enriched soil that has been stripped of competing vegetation as fire spreads through the forest. Additionally, fire eliminates the dense covering of organic waste and needles that may impede seedlings from getting to mineral soil. In Australia, certain eucalyptus species have gone even farther using this tactic. In fact, the combustible oils found in their bark, leaves, and wood promote fire. The trees swiftly resprout from protected buds when a fire breaks out, and their seeds begin to sprout in the cleared area. These trees have transformed a destructive force into a competitive advantage by adapting to fire. In the life cycle of the forest, fire turns into a partner rather than an adversary. A radical change that makes room for rebirth. Fire is essential to the environment of sequoia groves. The enormous trees of California's Sierra Nevada, known as giant sequoias, have developed alongside fire as a persistent feature. Their thick, fibrous bark, which may reach a thickness of more than a foot, offers superior fire protection. Fires that would destroy most other trees are frequently avoided by mature sequoias. However, fire doesn't just protect mature sequoias. Their ability to reproduce depends on it. Due to their small size, sequoia seeds require bare mineral soil in order to sprout. Seedlings cannot establish because of the dense duff of organic materials and needles that builds up on the forest floor. This debris is removed by fire, which makes the environment perfect for seed sprouting. Shortly after the land has been prepped, fire also releases the seeds from the sequoia's cones. Furthermore, fire provides young sequoias with the light and room they require by reducing competition from less fire-resistant trees. These woods had decades of fire suppression, which resulted in a decrease in the regeneration of sequoia and an accumulation of combustible undergrowth that increased the destructiveness of subsequent fires. Forest managers now understand that healthy sequoia groves depend on permitting or purposefully starting low-intensity fires. For the forest to survive, the fire and the trees must work together as partners. Even after being felled, certain trees can resprout. Many trees are remarkably resilient in the face of apparent death. A tree may produce new shoots from its stump or roots if it is felled, but its root system is still healthy. These sprouts, also known as suckers or coppice growth, can occasionally grow quickly thanks to the large root system that is still there. Particularly active resprouters are several species. This is how many oaks, poplar resprouters, poplars, and willows can regrow. Humans have utilized this ability for thousands of years in a process known as coppicing, in which trees are purposefully felled to provide several stems that are then harvested periodically. Growth can continue for hundreds or even thousands of years on the same root system. The base and root system of certain ancient coppice stools are thought to be more than 1,000 years old, despite the fact that individual stems are frequently removed. Cutting a tree doesn't always mean its life is over because it can resprout. Coppice resprout. When given the chance, the roots will attempt again and send new growth in the direction of the light. It is a type of perseverance, an unwillingness to give up, and it is ingrained in the tree's fundamental structure. The character of young forests differs from that of ancient forests. It seems different to stroll through an old-growth forest than it does to stroll through a newly regrown woodland or a young plantation. The complexity of old-growth forests develops over generations. They have a multi-layered canopy made up of trees of all ages, from giants to saplings. Cavity-nesting, growth-nesting birds and other creatures find a home in large standing dead trees known as snags. Nesting snags. Numerous fungi and insects can be found on fallen logs in different stages of decomposition, as well as seedlings. The forest floor is dotted with dense areas where new trees vie for light and voids where older trees have fallen. Biological variety is supported by this structural diversity. An older forest can support more species than a younger, simpler one. Because of the intricate canopy, the microclimate is also distinct. It is more stable, has less temperature variation, and has more humidity. Because of decades of organic matter accumulation and the growth of intricate fungal networks, the soil itself is even richer. In addition to being older, ancient woods have more complex, whole, and completely developed ecosystems. They cannot be readily replaced once they are gone. Time itself is an essential component, regardless of the number of trees planted. Carbon stored for centuries may be released if old-growth snags and growth woods are cut down. As they develop, trees absorb carbon dioxide from the environment and lock it away in their wood. Massive amounts of carbon are stored in old-growth forests in the form of fallen logs, standing dead trees, and the deep soil layers that have accumulated over many generations. A large portion of this stored carbon is released when these trees are torn down. As trees burn or decay, some are discharged right away. As wood products decompose and logging disturbed soil releases its carbon reserves, more is progressively liberated. Compared to younger forests, old-growth forests are thought to store 2 to 3 times as much carbon per acre. This indicates that their annihilation increases atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, which exacerbates climate change. Replanting is beneficial, but young trees rarely have the same storage capacity as the old forests they replace, and it takes decades for them to store a sizable amount of carbon. Preserving biodiversity and aesthetics is not the only goal of protecting old-growth forests. It also acts as a climate strategy by preventing large amounts of carbon from being released into the atmosphere and instead storing it safely in soil and wood. Every old tree felled is a library destroyed. A service that regulates climate change was lost. Urban heat islands are lessened, and cooling is provided by trees. The urban heat island effect states that cities are generally hotter than the rural areas around them. Buildings, concrete and asphalt absorb and hold heat, while the absence of vegetation reduces the amount of cooling that occurs through evaporation and transpiration. Trees use a variety of strategies to counteract this effect. By providing shade, they stop surfaces from absorbing sunlight. A street with tree canopy shade may be 20 to 45 degrees cooler than one without. Additionally, trees cool by releasing water vapor from their leaves through transpiration. By using heat energy, this process cools the air around it. On a hot day, a single huge tree can transpire hundreds of gallons of water, which is the equivalent of several air conditioners' worth of cooling. Additionally, by soaking rain, urban woods lower stormwater runoff, enhance air quality by filtering contaminants, and assist city people psychologically. Compared to persons without access to trees, residents of tree-lined streets report higher levels of health and well-being, according to studies. Cities are investing in natural infrastructure that offers several advantages by implementing extensive tree planting initiatives. Trees regulate water, cool the city, purify the air, and add beauty. They are living technologies that run for decades without expense and only need sunshine as a power source. Trees lower stress and enhance mental wellness. It's possible that humans are inherently drawn to trees and the natural world. Spending time near trees has been repeatedly shown to improve mood, lower blood pressure and pulse rate, and reduce stress. There are quantifiable effects even from window views of trees. Compared to patients who have views of buildings or parking lots, hospital patients who have views of trees recover more quickly and need less pain medication. Employees in offices with views of the outdoors report being more satisfied with their jobs and being able to focus better. There are probably several causes. Trees provide visual richness that captures our interest without becoming overpowering. Soft attraction is a term used by state psychologists. Our brains may naturally find solace in the fractal patterns of branches and leaves. The dappled light through the canopy and the sounds of the wind in the leaves produce sensory experiences that soothe the nervous system. At the most basic level, humans developed in tree-rich settings. Our predecessors lived in savannas and forests for millions of years, where trees provided food, drink, and safety. It's possible that our favorable reaction to trees is an evolutionary legacy, a profound understanding of the environments in which our species evolved. The effect is real regardless of the mechanisms. We are just starting to quantify and comprehend the ways in which trees help us. The trees' seasonal cycles. Trees use their seasonal variations to indicate the passing of time. Trees in temperate climates serve as living calendars, with their changes signifying the passage of the year. The first tentative leaves appear in the spring, fragile and bright green, along with swollen buds. The continuous process of photosynthesis, thick shade, and full canopies are all features of summer. Before they fall, autumn turns leaves into dazzling displays of color. The bare architecture of trees against the sky is seen in the winter. Over millions of years, trees have learned to read and react to signals of temperature and day length, which are what cause these shifts. Each species exhibits surprisingly regular timing of these events, or phenology in scientific terminology, while meteorological conditions cause variations from year to year. Since variations in timing can be a sign of climate change, scientists are now closely monitoring these adjustments. Warming temperatures are causing trees to either hold their leaves later or blossom early. They serve as both recorders and witnesses. The planet's shifting patterns are measured by their rhythms, a biological clock. Chemical changes give leaves their fall colors. Autumn's vivid reds, oranges, and yellows are not added to leaves. Rather, they are made visible. Chlorophyll predominates throughout the growing season, and other pigments are obscured by its green color. Trees start preparing for winter by decomposing chlorophyll and extracting its vital nitrogen to store in their trunks and roots as the days become shorter and the temperature drops. Other pigments show through as the green fades. Yellow and orange hues are produced by carotenoids, which have always been there. Reds and purples are produced by anthocyanins, which are produced by some trees in the fall. The species, climate, and health of each particular tree all affect the precise hues and their intensity. More vivid reds result from the production of anthocyanins, which is encouraged by bright, sunny fall days and cool nights. The autumn show is a byproduct of trees effectively recovering resources prior to dropping their leaves, not something that benefits us. However, the beauty is not diminished by understanding the chemistry. If anything, the spectacle is made even more amazing by the knowledge that we are witnessing a massive chemical ballet as millions of trees simultaneously change in preparation for winter. While some trees turn brown, others display stunning fall foliage. Not every tree puts on a display in the fall. Some just turn brown as their leaves die, including many beeches and oaks. The distinction is in the extent to which they remove nutrients prior to leaf drop. Brightly colored trees are usually better at breaking down chlorophyll, recovering nitrogen and other chemicals, and leaving behind or creating other hues. As they die, browning trees may withdraw less fully, leaving more chemicals in their leaves. This may have to do with tree health, environmental factors, or species strategy. Trees under stress tend to have less vivid colors. In fact, the health of a forest may be determined by the brightness of its fall leaves, with damaged woods displaying duller hues. Geographic variation is another. The autumnal displays of a variety of species and climates in New England are well known. That yield striking hues. Even the browns have their own beauty in other places where fall is more subdued. The forest is quietly changing and resting without much fanfare, preserving energy for the rebirth that spring will bring. The summer before they open, winter buds are created. It does not immediately produce the buds that open in the spring to release new leaves and flowers. The previous summer, they were founded. During the fall and winter, little bundles of embryonic leaves or blossoms are covered in protective scales. Despite the cold and snow, these buds remain dormant. Before they can open, many need what are known as cooling hours. This keeps them from being tricked by late winter mild periods that could be followed by fatal frosts. The buds won't enlarge and open in response to spring warmth until they have had enough cold exposure. A tiny representation of what will emerge is contained within each bud. Microscopic leaves have already developed and are just awaiting water and warmth to enlarge. This implies that even when they are alive in the present season, trees are constantly planning for the next one. Winter buds are assurances, vows etched in plant tissue that spring will arrive, the cycle will continue, and naked branches will once more be covered in green. In order to guarantee pollination, spring blossoms frequently appear before leaves. Before their leaves appear, many trees bloom in the early spring. This timing is deliberate rather than coincidental. Trees make sure their blooms are completely visible to pollinators by blossoming before leaves appear. Visibility is important in a forest when pollinators are competing for attention. Flowers receive more sunshine and can warm up more rapidly on chilly spring days when there are no leaves to shelter them, which attracts insects more. Additionally, wind-pollinated trees such as oaks, maples, and birches are able to discharge pollen that travels more freely without being trapped in their own foliage since they do not have leaves. The early spring is a limited time for trees. They must blossom before other plants divert all pollinators' attention, but after the worst of the winter cold. There's a race against time, whether it's cherry blossoms against a dark sky or maple blooms hanging like little red ornaments on bare trees covered in flowers. Prior to investing energy in leaves and growth, they are finishing the vital task of reproduction. It's a calculated gamble, a bet on the future that the blossoms won't be destroyed by late frosts. Even though they lack petals, certain trees can produce lovely flowers. Not every tree bloom is ostentatious. Numerous trees bear tiny, unremarkable flowers, devoid of the vibrant petals we typically associate with flowers. For example, drooping catkins, clusters of tiny flowers, are produced by oaks and release enormous volumes of pollen into the wind. Among the first springtime blooms, willows produce fluffy catkins, which are essential early sources of nectar for bees. Similar structures are produced by numerous conifers, alders, and birches. These blooms have their own subtle beauty, but they might not stop us in our tracks the way cherry blossoms do. The early spring forest's texture and color are enhanced by the tall cones of older blooms, the delicate dangling catkins of birches, and the pale gold catkins of willows that catch the light. They serve as a reminder that beauty may take many shapes, and that not all significant flowers make a big show of themselves. These understated flowers are working flowers, concentrating on the utilitarian task of ornamental reproduction. However, in their abundance and simplicity, they produce their own aesthetic, a more subdued, gentler celebration of spring. Like a fingerprint, tree bark is unique. Even in winter, when leaves are absent, most trees can be recognized if you can read their bark. The distinctive bark patterns of each species evolve with the tree's growth. The characteristic white or silver bark of birches peels in layers of paper. Sycamores produce a camouflage pattern of white, brown, and green by shedding bark in irregular spots. Oak bark is tough and severely furrowed. The grey, smooth beech bark is frequently spotted with ancient scars and markings. Lenticels are characteristic horizontal lines found in cherry bark. Trees' bark varies with age, frequently becoming more deeply grained. Young oaks have comparatively smooth bark, whereas old oaks have thick, rough bark. These patterns show how the bark develops and reacts to the trunk's growth underneath. To make room for the expanding tree, the bark must split or peel. Additionally, every species handles this growth in a unique way. Learning faces is similar to learning bark. They all appear identical at first, but with focus, they all become unique and identifiable. Identity is inscribed in bark across the forest. Every tree communicates with those who have mastered the language of pattern and texture. Trees with bark are protected from fire, disease, and insects. Bark is an essential protection mechanism in addition to being a beautiful characteristic. It creates a barrier of defense between a tree's live tissues and the environment. The tree's sensitive cambium layer, which is where growth takes place, is shielded by thick bark. Many insects are prevented from accessing the nutrient-rich inner layers by it. It is resistant to bacterial and fungal infections. With thicker bark that offers more insulation, it offers some fire protection. For fire protection, some trees, such as giant sequoia, oak, and cork, have grown incredibly thick bark. Through tiny holes known as lenticels, bark also aids in controlling gas exchange and water loss. Bark is dynamic, even though it appears dead. It is continuously added from the inside as the tree develops and removed from the outside as it flakes away and weathers. Because damaged bark reveals the weaker layers underneath, it can cause significant harm or even death to a tree. The first and most crucial line of defense for trees is violated when deer remove their bark or when humans hack into it. The tree cannot survive without the thin protective layer that the bark, which appears so sturdy and everlasting, provides. Certain trees have unique ways of losing their bark. As the tree grows, the bark thickens and cracks, yet the majority of it stays on the tree. Bark is actively shed by certain species. Birch bark gets its distinctive white or silver look when it peels away in horizontal strips. By peeling, mosses and lichens that may otherwise colonize the trunk are removed. In uneven spots, the bark of eucalyptus and sycamore flakes away, rejuvenating the surface of the trunk. In order to withstand air pollution, the London plane tree, a sycamore relative that is common in urban areas, sheds its bark. Some eucalyptus species lose so much bark that it builds up on the ground around them, posing a fire hazard in dry weather when the shedding clears away accumulated particulate. These trees are less vulnerable to vines that could normally climb them because of the smoothness of their peeling bark. Every strategy for controlling bark wear and growth offers a unique evolutionary response to the problems of preserving a living tissue column while permitting ongoing growth. Another example of how trees have adapted to their surroundings is the diversity of bark types and behaviors. Every solution is appropriate for certain possibilities and difficulties. It was once alive, but the outer bark is now dead tissue. The cambium layer produces the living tissue that makes up bark. Older bark cells are forced outward when new ones are created inside. These cells perish as they proliferate, hardening and thickening their walls. The term rhizome is particulate. Rhizome refers to the dead outer bark, and we can see and touch this dead tissue. The phloem is a layer of living bark that lies beneath it, nearer the heart of the tree. Sugars made in the leaves are transported to the roots and other areas of the tree by this living layer. It is a component of the circulation system of the tree. This inner live layer is protected by the exterior dead bark, which is just as important as our own blood vessels. By obstructing this nutrition flow, you might cause the tree to suffer severe harm or even die if you remove enough bark to reveal the phloem. Phloem. Everything above the girdling, a ring of damage that completely encircles the trunk, will be destroyed. Partial bark damage can occasionally be tolerated by trees by rooting nutrients around the damage, but substantial damage is frequently lethal. As a result, the bark we touch in passing is a complex structure. Form and function are combined into a protective covering that must strike a balance between stiffness and flexibility, permanence and growth, with a dead exterior shielding a living inner. Trees and their companions. In most habitats, fungi are essential to the survival of trees. One of the most significant relationships in nature is that between fungi and trees. Most tree species establish mycorrhizal relationships, which are links between fungal threads and tree roots. By spreading thread-like filaments called hyphae into the soil well beyond what roots alone can reach, the fungus takes over the root system. The tree's capacity to absorb water and nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, is significantly enhanced by these fungal networks. The fungi receive sugars from photosynthesis from the tree in return. In most natural environments, neither couple can survive without the other. Without their mycorrhizal fungi, trees grow ill and stunted. In contrast, the mushrooms are completely dependent on trees for carbon because they are unable to photosynthesize. Since plants first began to colonize land more than 400 million years ago, this cooperation has existed. Plants may have been able to escape aquatic habitats and live on land thanks to their partnership with fungi. These days, a tree's roots are basically hybrid structures that function as a combination of fungus and tree. The forest floor is a dynamic network of these alliances rather than merely soil. Trees and fungi are dependent on each other through invisible threads. The associations that different kinds of fungi have with trees vary. Mycorrhizales. Microbes are not all the same. There are two primary kinds, each with unique structures and purposes. Ectomycorrhizae microbes. Ectomycorrhizae extend between root cells without entering them and create a sheath around the exterior of fine roots. Trees like oaks, pines, and birches that grow in temperate forests frequently have these. Large mushrooms are frequently produced by ectomycorrhizal fungi, common species of fungi such as amanitas and boletes. In fact, endomycorrhizae, especially arbuscular mycorrhizae, enter root cells and create complex branching structures within them. Tropical trees, numerous fruit trees, and the majority of herbaceous plants are more likely to have these. The two varieties play distinct ecological functions and have distinct advantages. Certain trees have the ability to connect with several fungal species at once, even blending different kinds. Millions of years of coevolution, in which fungi and trees adapted to one another and to local environments, mycorrhizae, are reflected in the richness of these partnerships. These relationships can be adaptable and geographically specific, as evidenced by the fact that the particular fungi linked to a tree species in one area may differ from those in another. Beneath the surface, the forest is a web of connections that are necessary yet invisible. The fruiting bodies of fungus that coexist with trees are mushrooms. Only a small visible portion of a much larger creature is revealed when mushrooms grow beneath trees. The reproductive organ that produces spores for spread is the mushroom. The fungus's primary body lies underground, where it is connected to tree roots via a large network of filaments that run through the soil. These fungal networks can be massive at times. Arguably the largest single creature on Earth, a single individual of the honey fungus species Armillaria solidipes in Oregon is thought to cover more than 2,000 acres and weigh hundreds of tons. When the earth is moist and the conditions are favorable for spore production, which usually occurs after rain, the mushrooms that we see emerge. They appear, disperse their spores, and eventually deteriorate in a matter of days. In the meantime, the subterranean network continues to work with trees. Certain trees are frequently linked to particular species of mushrooms. Chanterelle armillaria, solidipes leaves, chanterelle's fruit close to conifers and oaks. Under pines and spruces, king boletes and chanterelle boletes can be seen. Take off in a car. Boletes car. Birches and conifers coexist with the recognizable red mushrooms with white dots. Foragers and naturalists can read the forest's subsurface partnerships and spot out obvious indications of invisible connections by knowing which mushrooms grow with particular trees. Additionally, certain trees collaborate with microbes that fix nitrogen. Certain trees have developed alliances with bacteria that are capable of doing something that most other species cannot, even mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizal fungi aid trees in obtaining phosphorus and other nutrients, transform atmospheric nitrogen into forms that plants can utilize. Certain trees have little swellings on their roots called root nodules, which are colonized by these nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The bacteria give off nitrogen, and the tree gives them carbohydrates. The legume family, which includes trees like acacias, mycorrhizal fungi, locusts, and mesquite, frequently forms this kind of relationship. It also happens in alders that have a cooperation with a different kind of bacteria that fixes nitrogen. Because they provide their own nitrogen fertilizer, these trees are frequently pioneer species that can colonize poor soils. They improve the soil over time, allowing other species to thrive there. Nitrogen-fixing trees frequently emerge early in disturbed forest recovery, setting the stage for further succession. In an effort to enhance soil, farmers and foresters occasionally purposefully plant nitrogen-fixing trees. These collaborations serve as a reminder that trees are part of networks of mutual assistance with bacteria, fungi, and innumerable other creatures that all contribute to the ecosystem of the forest. Fungi and algae form partnerships to form lichen. Mesquite, lichens on tree bark. Among the most noticeable creatures on tree bark are lichens, which can be found as crusty, leafy, or branching growths with hues varying from blazing orange and yellow to gray and green. Lichens. Lichens are essentially collaborations between fungi and photosynthetic partners, typically algae or cyanobacteria, despite their appearance as single organisms. While the photosynthetic partner uses photosynthesis to create food, the fungus offers protection and structure. They can coexist on surfaces like bare rock, tree bark, and even desert dirt, where neither could live on its own. Tree lichens are not parasites. They merely use the bark as a surface to develop on. They do no damage to the tree. Since many species are susceptible to pollution, an abundance of lichens is actually frequently an indication of high air quality. A tree with a variety of lichens on it is probably in a healthy habitat. Large, well-developed lichen communities are indicative of old, stable ecosystems, since lichens grow very slowly, sometimes just a few millimeters annually. They contribute to the diversity of the forest, establishing microhabitats for small invertebrates and supplying food for some species. These obvious relationships on the bark serve as a reminder that the richness of the forest is a result of relationships within relationships and complexity building upon complexity. Without causing damage to trees, epiphytes grow on them. Trees in temperate and tropical rainforests frequently have other plants growing on their trunks and branches. These epiphytes, which include ferns, mosses, orchids, and bromeliads, are not parasites. Rather, they only use trees as platforms to access light. They collect nutrients from organic material that builds up in bark fissures and water from rain and fog. Hundreds of epiphyte species can be found in the canopies of some tropical trees, forming whole gardens. With some trees bearing tons of epiphyte growth, the combined weight of all these visitors can be significant. But the trees continue to stand, strong enough to sustain these aerial communities. Epiphytes significantly boost the biodiversity of the forest by giving innumerable creatures a place to live and food. In bromeliad epiphytes, bromeliads filled with water, tree frogs breed. Canopy orchids are pollinated by insects. Mammals and birds consume the fruits and leaves of epiphytes. Bromeliad epiphyte. In exchange for the real estate they supply, the trees develop into hubs of biodiversity that sustain communities that would not otherwise exist on the ground. This link demonstrates a different aspect of the interconnectedness of forests, where trees support entire ecosystems in the air as living frames. Spanish moss is an epiphyte that hangs from trees throughout the American South. It is neither Spanish nor moss. An iconic atmospheric image is produced by Spanish moss. It is neither Spanish nor moss, despite its name. It is a blooming plant that belongs to the bromeliad epiphytic bromeliad family and is linked to pineapples. Through unique scales on its leaves, it immediately collects water and nutrients from the air and rain because it lacks roots in the earth. It produces little, fragrant blooms using photosynthetic processes. Although thick growth might occasionally shadow foliage or add enough weight to contribute to limb breaking in storms, Spanish moss does not cause harm to the trees it grows on. It serves as nesting material for birds. In its tangles, some little animals hide. It was once gathered and used as filling for automobile seats and beds. With the help of wind-blown particles that cling to new branches, the plant can develop amazingly quickly. Every year, a single strand might grow several inches. The appearance of southern woodlands is changed by this drapery, which gives them an enigmatic, aged appearance. It serves as a reminder that trees give other organisms the chance to develop surprising ways of surviving in the forest, and that bromeliads and plants have evolved innumerable life strategies. The roots of the forest trees are the secret life. Usually, roots reach well beyond the canopy. When we look at a tree, we picture its roots as a mirror image underground, a structure that is fairly comparable. However, reality is not like that. The majority of tree roots spread horizontally rather near the surface, while some, known as tap roots, grow straight down. The top 3 feet of soil, which contains the most oxygen, water, and nutrients, is where most tree roots are found. Sometimes twice the diameter of the crown or more, these horizontal roots can reach well beyond the tree's canopy. Neighboring plants' roots frequently entwine to form an intricate underground network. The fact that building or soil compaction can harm trees far beyond their visible canopy is explained by this spreading root structure. It also implies that trees are far more intertwined beneath the surface than we think. In a forest, numerous trees' roots contact, overlap, and even graft together to form physical bonds between people. What we perceive to be individual trees above ground might instead be a part of a common subterranean network, an unseen framework that supports the visible forest. Roots develop in the direction of nutrients and water sources. Instead of growing at random through the earth, roots react to their surroundings. They develop toward moisture and show hydrotropism. When a portion of the root system comes into contact with moist soil, those roots expand, whereas roots in drier regions cease to grow. Likewise, roots exhibit nutrition foraging, expanding more widely in nutrient-rich environments. Trees can effectively utilize their surroundings thanks to their directed growth, which concentrates their root systems where supplies are most readily available. Additionally, in response to gravity, fine feeding roots spread horizontally, while the big structural roots grow downward. Tree roots are known to locate and infiltrate water pipelines and sewer lines in urban settings, following the moisture and nutrients that seep from these sources. For sessile species such as trees that are unable to relocate to better environments, the capacity to perceive and react to environmental gradients is crucial. Rather, they develop in the direction of their needs, constantly observing their surroundings and modifying their shape accordingly. The root system responds continuously to shifting soil conditions, making it a dynamic structure rather than a static one. Sinker roots that extend to deep water are produced by certain trees. Some trees send specialized roots even deeper, although the majority of roots stay relatively shallow. In order to reach groundwater, these sinker roots may descend 20 to 30 to 60 feet from the horizontal root system. This tactic is especially important for trees in arid areas, as they send deep roots to access water sources that are inaccessible to plants with shallow roots. In the American Southwest, mesquite trees are well known for having roots that reach depths of more than 150 feet below the surface of the tree itself. Because of this, they can live in deserts with little surface water. Although deep roots offer stability and drought protection, they are costly for the tree to grow and care for. Trees spend more on expanding shallow networks and less on deep roots in areas with enough shallow water. A tree's root system is a reflection of its surroundings and evolutionary background. Every species has evolved to the unique difficulties of finding water in its growing environment. Separate trees can be joined into shared systems by root grafting. A live connection can occasionally be formed when two trees' roots grow so close to one another that they fuse. When roots from the same species, or occasionally closely related species, come into contact and align their cambium layers, this phenomenon is known as root grafting. The two root systems eventually become continuous when the tissues combine. Grafted trees can exchange nutrients, water, and even chemical signals. Root grafting, which produces vast networks of interconnected plants, is frequent in some woods. The implications of this are unexpected. With the help of resources provided by the connected trees, a stump whose roots are grafted to living neighbors can live forever. Sometimes decades after being chopped down, forestry professionals discover old stumps that have been maintained by nearby residents. Disease can also be propagated by root grafting. The disease can spread to nearby trees through the grafted roots if one tree gets infected, but it also offers stability. When under stress, connected trees can pool resources, with stronger trees helping out their weaker neighbors. A more interconnected forest is produced by root grafting, in which trees are practically connected to one another by a shared subterranean infrastructure rather than existing independently. Through the earth, the root cap directs the formation of roots. The root cap is a structure found at the terminal of every developing root. A collection of cells in the shape of a thimble that shields the fragile developing tip as it penetrates the earth. Rocks, organic materials, and bacteria are all found in soil. A complicated and frequently harsh setting, with its outer cells continually being worn away and rebuilt from behind. The root cap endures the trauma. Mucilage, a sticky material secreted by the root cap, lubricates the roots' passage and facilitates their ability to move between soil particles. Specialized cells in the root cap also sense gravity and inform the root of which way is down. Instead of growing aimlessly, roots are guaranteed to grow downward into the soil thanks to this gravity sensing. Although the root cap is a very small structure, often only a few millimeters, it is crucial to the formation of roots. Without it, roots are unable to properly orient themselves or enter soil. It is among the numerous specialized structures that trees have developed to address the unique problems associated with their way of living. In this instance, the difficulty of acquiring the materials required for life while developing from darkness into a solid medium. The surface area for absorption is increased by root hairs. Thousands of microscopic root hairs sprout from the root surface just behind each root's growing tip. These are tiny expansions of individual cells that greatly expand the surface area. Hundreds or even thousands of square meters of absorptive surface can be provided by the billions of root hairs that a single mature tree may have. The main points of entry for nutrients and water into the tree are the root hairs. They make close contact with the soil environment as they develop into the microscopic gaps between soil particles. Before withering and being replaced by new root hairs that develop deeper along the path, each root hair only lasts a few days or weeks. At the growing tips, where the soil is being investigated for the first time, this continuous turnover maintains the absorptive zone. Transplant shock happens because the fragile and tiny root hairs are typically lost when trees are moved. Before the tree can efficiently absorb water once more, its root hair network must grow back. The survival of every tree depends on these unseen structures, which are too small to view without magnification. The point of contact between soil and trees, where nutrients and water flow from the earth into living things like trees and wildlife. Innumerable species rely on trees for sustenance all year long. Trees provide food resources throughout the year, making them living buffets. Their blossoms offer pollen and nectar to bees, butterflies, and other insects in the spring. Their leaves provide food for herbivores and caterpillars in the summer, which in turn provide food for birds and other predators. Many trees yield nuts, seeds, or fruits in the fall, which help insects, birds, and mammals get ready for winter. Woodpeckers, deer, squirrels, and jays all eat acorns. Bears, birds, and tiny mammals eat berries. Squirrels and crossbills are fed by pine seeds. Trees provide a source of food even in the cold. Rabbits and browsing deer are supported by buds. Beavers and porcupines eat bark. Woodpeckers and other birds depend on insects that hibernate in cracks in the bark for their protein. Sapsuckers are drawn to the sap of some trees, drilling birds that come back to sip the lovely liquid. Woodpeckers feed on wood-boring beetle larvae, which are found in dead and decaying trees. Entire bird populations can be fed by the hundreds of caterpillar species that can be found on a single oak tree. The majority of woodland creatures would go hungry if there were no trees. Trees are the first producers in the forest food chain, absorbing sunlight and converting it into energy that powers the ecosystem as a whole. More trees are planted by squirrels than by humans. In order to survive the winter, squirrels build caches by collecting and burying nuts in the fall. Even under deep snow, they can retrieve many of these concealed stores thanks to their exceptional memory. They don't find them all, though. Some of the nuts that they forget or don't need sprout in the spring. Every hickory nut or lost acorn represents a tree that was planted under perfect circumstances. Buried in dirt that has been loosened by the squirrels digging at the proper depth. Millions of nuts are buried by thousands of squirrels throughout a forest, and a sizable portion are never found. These grow into the trees of the future. As a result, Squirrels are among the most crucial tree planters in temperate forests. They act as dispersers, ensuring that trees spread to new locations and that the forest grows back. It's a mutualistic relationship. In essence, trees pay squirrels to spread their seeds, since they generate considerably more nuts than are required for reproduction. In addition to providing food, squirrels unintentionally create forests. It's possible that certain trees, such as oaks, have developed their nut traits especially to attract squirrels, producing nuts that are both manageable and large enough to be profitable. The frenzied collecting and burial that occurs every autumn is a continuation of the evolutionary dance that has sculpted squirrels and trees. Many other species use the dwellings that woodpeckers dig. Ecosystem engineers are woodpeckers. Dozens of additional species benefit from their excavation effort. They make nest chambers by hammering into dead or dying trees with their shock-absorbing skulls and specialized beaks. It turns into desirable real estate when they have raised their young and left the cavity. Old woodpecker holes provide nesting sites for owls, kestrels, and other species unable to dig their own cavities. They serve as shelter for tiny creatures, including squirrels. They are occasionally colonized by wasps and bees. Cavities close to the earth are even home to some salamanders and frogs. A succession of species may use a single woodpecker cavity for decades at a time. Cavities are plentiful and home to a variety of species in woods with a large number of dead standing trees. However, cavity nesting species decrease in managed forests where dead trees are removed. For both breeding and consuming the insects that inhabit these trees, woodpeckers require dead or dying wood to excavate. Maintaining the cavity nesting population requires protecting snags or dead standing trees. In addition to hunting and territoriality, the sound of woodpeckers hammering through the forest also signifies the creation of new habitat. Long after the builder has left, homes are being constructed that will benefit the larger community. Tree seeds are spread by birds across long distances. Fleshy fruits are produced by several trees, especially to draw birds. Frequently kilometers away from the parent tree, birds consume the fruits, break down the pulp, and expel the seeds. By mixing populations, this long-distance dispersal enables trees to colonize new areas and preserve genetic variety. Because digestive acids weaken seed coverings, some seeds even need to transit through a bird's digestive tract in order to successfully germinate. Trees are dispersed by different birds. Waxwings and thrushes adore berries and spread cherries. Cache acorns, scattering oaks, hawthorns, and holly jays. In the tropics, fruit pigeons spread nutmeg and fig seeds. Both partners have been molded by the interaction between birds and trees. In order to effectively disseminate their seeds, trees have evolved fruits with sizes, hues, and ripening times that are appealing to birds. Birds have developed efficient fruit-processing digestive systems and behaviors that allow them to perch in ideal germination locations. Even if the older trees are still present, the trees that rely on birds for dispersal may not be able to reproduce when they are eliminated from a forest due to habitat loss or shooting. The future of the forest rests on the wings fluttering, birds flying and eating and leaving seeds behind, and the knowledge of old trees. The rings and presence of old trees contain wisdom. Standing next to a tree that has endured for centuries or even millennia has a unique quality. These ancient trees have endured so much hardship and seen so much history that their very existence seems important. Through luck and tenacity, they have defied illnesses and pests, survived storms that have uprooted their neighbors, and survived droughts that have killed off younger trees. The width and density of the wood in each year's growth ring serve as a memory, a record of the circumstances of that year. In order to recreate historical droughts and wet periods, date wooden artifacts and constructions, and gain an understanding of past climates, scientists examine these rings. Beyond their scientific significance, however, ancient trees appear to possess a certain wisdom. Through personal experience and evolutionary adaptation, they have learned how to persevere. They invest substantially in defense, grow slowly, and keep their environment in balance. They take their time. They persevere. Spending time with old trees allows one to absorb some of this patience and long-term perspective that considers human worries to be small details in a much larger narrative. By reminding us that we are a part of something bigger and more lasting than ourselves, they help us put our lives in perspective. Trees have been acknowledged by indigenous peoples as relatives and instructors. Many traditional societies around the world view trees as living entities deserving of respect, sometimes as instructors or relatives, rather than as merely resources. Conventional knowledge systems acknowledge the agency, communication, and deservingness of trees. In their ceremonies, the Houdini express gratitude to trees for the gifts they offer. Some trees are revered by the Maui as tonga, or spiritually significant gifts. Aboriginal Australians have a strong connection between particular trees and landscapes and their songlines and stories. These viewpoints, which colonists frequently regarded as archaic, are now being acknowledged by science as possessing profound truths. Trees do establish communities, communicate, and help one another. Western science is just now starting to measure what indigenous knowledge systems have long understood. Our treatment of trees is altered when we acknowledge that they are beings rather than objects. It implies that woods have rights, and that old trees have to be preserved for their inherent worth as well as their practical uses. The wisdom of traditional interactions with trees is becoming more and more relevant as climate change and biodiversity loss pick up speed. Perhaps the traditional perspectives of trees as teachers and relatives provide much-needed wisdom. The locations of the oldest trees are frequently kept a secret in order to safeguard them. When you are the oldest living thing on Earth, publicity might be deadly. To prevent vandalism, souvenir collectors, and the basic effects of too many people, the precise sites of the oldest bristlecone pines are kept a secret. There are signs pointing visitors toward generic old trees. The real ancients, however, are still unknown, and only scholars are aware of them. Because rare and old items are not always treated with respect, this concealment is required. Trees have suffered from soil compaction from too many feet near their roots, carving, and people chopping off branches as mementos. Restrictions and fences have been necessary to protect some of the world's most well-known old trees. Scaffolding has been used to hold the branches of England's largest oak, which is said to be between 800 and 1,000 years old, and to protect the surrounding soil from damaging roots. The oldest trees are kept secret as a kind of protection, acknowledging that sometimes the greatest way to honor something is to honor it without touching it or claiming a portion of it. The oldest trees serve as mute witnesses. Their longevity is made feasible in part by the fact that the general public hasn't discovered them. To safeguard them, certain trees have been granted legal personhood. A growing movement in recent years has aimed to give trees and other natural creatures legal rights. Certain trees or forests have received legal personhood in various jurisdictions, which acknowledges them as entities with rights that can be represented in court. The Te Urewera forest in New Zealand was given legal personhood, which means it has rights that must be upheld and can no longer be owned. In numerous locations, individual trees have been given heritage protection, which makes it unlawful to damage them. These legal developments acknowledge that trees are valuable in ways other than only helping people. They recognize that forests and old trees are essential components of the biological wealth of the Earth and our common legacy. In a legal system built around human interests, giving trees rights may seem odd, but it is a recognition that human well-being is reliant on the health of the larger living world. Trees cannot be felled for financial gain if they have legal status. When making decisions that impact individuals, guardians, or agents, they must take their interests into account. The way that some communities view the relationship between humans and nature has fundamentally changed from dominance to kinship, from usage to respect, although this legal approach is still developing. The global climate depends heavily on the carbon deposited in trees. The Earth's climate system depends heavily on trees. Through photosynthesis, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They store carbon in their roots, wood, and surrounding soil. Massive amounts of carbon are stored by forests as a whole. Soil and timber contain hundreds of billions of tons. The main greenhouse gas causing climate change, carbon dioxide, is regulated in part by this storage. This stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere after forest fires or clearing, which contributes to global warming. A significant portion of the world's carbon emissions, roughly 10% to 15%, is caused by deforestation. One of the best ways to combat climate change is to preserve existing forests, particularly old-growth forests that have a high capacity to store carbon. Afforestation and reforestation, or growing trees where none previously existed, can be beneficial, but it takes decades for young forests to store a sizable amount of carbon. The natural processes that have been extracting carbon from the atmosphere for decades or even centuries are the trees that still stand today. To keep children safe is to keep ourselves safe. Preserving one of the most crucial systems for controlling the planet's temperature. A tiny amount of ancient carbon is released with each tree removed. Climate stabilization is being achieved with each protected forest. Particularly crucial to climate and biodiversity are tropical rainforests. Despite making up only around 6% of the planet's geographical area, tropical rainforests are home to nearly half of all plant and animal species. They are hotspots for biodiversity, where evolution has created an almost unfathomable diversity of life. More tree species can be found in a single hectare of rainforest than in all of North America. There are innumerable niches for specialist species due to the intricate structure of rainforests with multiple canopy layers. However, rainforests also play a vital role in the global climate. They store enormous amounts of carbon, and their transpiration, which transfers moisture from the tropics to higher latitudes, influences global weather patterns. Rainfall patterns throughout South America and beyond are influenced by the Amazon rainforest alone. Additionally, tropical forests are being cut down for development, logging, and agriculture at startling rates. Species become extinct, carbon is released, and local climates change as they disappear. According to some scientists, the Amazon is on the verge of a transition from rainforest to savanna due to deforestation and climate change. This transition would release massive amounts of carbon dioxide and result in catastrophic extinctions. Preserving remote locations is not the only goal of tropical rainforest conservation. It is about preserving the systems that are vital to the stability of the planet. Systems that we are only now starting to comprehend, but that are vital to all of us. If we do not preserve existing forests, planting trees is insufficient. Planting trees has gained popularity as a response to climate change. Numerous initiatives are pledging billions of trees. Although this is a good thing, it may mask a more significant reality. It is significantly more beneficial to preserve existing forests, especially old-growth forests, than to create new ones. Compared to immature plantations, mature forests support higher biodiversity, store more carbon, and offer more ecosystem services. If not properly cared for, A tree planted today may not survive at all and will take decades to yield the benefits of a mature tree. Monocultures, or rows of a single species, are planted in many tree planting operations. These lack the ecological richness of natural forests. Some have even harmed those ecosystems by planting trees in savannas and grasslands where they do not normally exist. Planting can take attention away from the more difficult tasks of halting destruction and preserving old forests. Centuries of growth and carbon storage are lost with each ancient forest that is taken down. We don't have to wait for replacement trees to reach maturity for decades or even centuries. Planting trees is a good thing, but protecting forests is even more important. We have to do both. However, before restoring what has been lost, the focus should be on preserving what currently exists, the living legacy of centuries. The importance of trees in culture. Throughout history, trees have been revered in many different societies. Trees have been revered throughout the history of humanity. Thor in Norse mythology and Zeus in Greek mythology both revered the oak. According to Nordic religion, the ash tree maintained the universe. All planets are connected by its roots and branches. Groves of trees served as sacred sites for rites in Celtic cultures. Buddhists revere the Bodhi tree, which is where the Buddha obtained enlightenment. Certain trees and woodlands are revered in many Native American traditions as sacred sites where the spiritual and material realms converge. From ancient Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, the tree of life is a symbol of connection, growth, and the support of life in stories and religions all across the world. These customs acknowledge a fundamental quality of trees. They bear witness to time, provide life, and serve as bridges between the earth and the sky. Their shape echoes the basic structures of reality, placing them at the center of many cosmologies. People frequently have a unique bond with trees, a sense of significance that goes beyond their usefulness, even in secular modern countries. This almost universal respect implies that people find something admirable in trees, a presence that appeals to our most fundamental nature. Individual trees are now well known and attract tourists from all over the world. A few trees have become famous on their own. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people visit the General Sherman Sequoia, individuals who come especially to stand in front of the biggest tree in the world. Sherwood Forest's main oak tree is connected to the Robin Hood myth. Until it toppled in 2010, Anne Frank's chestnut tree, which could be seen from the attic where she hid, stood as a testament to perseverance and hope. Now, its descendants are planted all over the world. In 1973, a truck driver famously ran down the tree of Tricentennia, which was formerly thought to be the most remote tree on Earth, standing lonesome in the Sahara. An act that, considering its isolation, appears nearly impossible. A metal sculpture that honors the lost has taken its place. These well-known trees turn into pilgrimage destinations, where people go to observe something remarkable or to connect with nature or history. The ability of individual trees to inspire creativity is demonstrated by the fact that they can become well-known and recognized on other continents. They are unique individuals with stories to tell and a presence to be felt and remembered, not merely members of a species. Seeing a tree like that is a way to share in a common human experience, to join the innumerable people who have stood in the same location and gazed up in awe. Around the world, trees serve as markers for significant historical occurrences and locations. Living monuments are trees. Locations where agreements were signed are marked by treaty oaks. Liberty trees honor acts of revolt. Survivor trees withstand calamities and grow into resilient emblems. The Oklahoma City bombing memorial's survivor tree. The American elm that survived the explosion is today a representation of hope and survival. A pear tree that had withstood the assaults on the World Trade Center was restored and brought back to the memorial location. Trees in Hiroshima have withstood the atomic explosion. There are still living reminders of that terrible day. These trees are mute witnesses to the events of human history. Because they are living, growing, and reaching toward the future yet rooted in historical soil, they evoke a deep connection to the past that stone monuments cannot fully replicate. In remembrance of dead friends, veterans plant trees. To celebrate births and deaths, families plant trees. Using trees to commemorate important occasions is a long-standing custom that is still in use today. An understanding that trees are resilient and have the capacity to preserve memories for future generations. The act of planting a tree is an act of hope, a conviction that the tree will be there to see the future. Urban trees increase the value and livability of cities. Despite being underappreciated, trees are an important part of urban infrastructure. Shade from street trees keeps the heat down and decreases cooling expenses. By filtering contaminants, they enhance the quality of the air. They lessen discharge from stormwater. Rainwater that might otherwise overwhelm drainage systems is absorbed by their roots. Even in crowded cities, they offer habitat for birds, insects, and small mammals. Tree-lined roadways can result in a sometimes significant boost in property values. Tree-lined avenues attract more customers and generate more revenue for businesses. City inhabitants benefit psychologically from trees, which lower stress and enhance mental wellness. They provide physical landscape beauty and seasonal variation. Urban trees nonetheless confront several obstacles in spite of these advantages. Poor and compacted soil is common. Pollution of the air and water stresses them. Pavement confines the roots. To make room for electrical cables, branches are drastically trimmed. Only a small portion of the maximum lifespan of many urban trees is reached. Nevertheless, they continue to thrive in small yards and sidewalk cuttings, offering their services without protest. Actively maintaining city trees, or urban forestry, is becoming more widely acknowledged as a crucial component of urban design. Future thriving communities will be those who make investments in their urban forests, understanding that trees are infrastructure just as vital as roads and sewage, not just ornaments. The skill of cultivating trees in miniature is known as bonsai. When trees are meticulously cultivated and reduced in size, the Japanese art of bonsai shows what may be accomplished. Ordinary trees planted in pots and shaped using pruning, wiring, and great attention to detail to stay small while retaining the proportions of a full-size tree are known as bonsai. They are not a unique species. Even though a bonsai is only a foot tall, it has the spreading branches and gnarled trunk of an old tree. Some bonsai are themselves very old, having been handed down through the generations from trees that are hundreds of years old and still manageable with 2 hands. Patience, focus, and a thorough knowledge of tree growth are necessary for the craft. Working with the tree's innate characteristics to create a living sculpture is more about partnership than dominance. Every bonsai is different. The species, the artist's vision, and the tree's own reactions to training all influence its design. Bonsai serves as a reminder that trees are adaptive, responsive, and flexible. They develop despite being confined to a small container, seeking light and occasionally producing leaves, blooms, and fruit. They show that a tree's essence can be found at a variety of scales, that even in situations when size is constrained, the want to expand and reach higher endures. Details that would be imperceptible in a full-sized tree are evident and appreciated in miniature. Gaining personal knowledge about balance, form, and the perseverance of development, the forest's future, where trees can grow, is changing due to climate change. The ideal temperate zones for many tree species are changing as a result of rising global temperatures. Conditions that are favorable for specific species are shifting northward and higher in the northern hemisphere. In order to keep up with climate change, species that developed for colder climes might find their current habitats too warm, and their seeds would not be able to get to the more suitable areas in time. Under normal circumstances, trees move slowly, with the distance that seeds may travel being a limiting factor. It's possible that some species will be left behind, stuck in climates to which they aren't acclimated, unable to migrate to colder regions where they could flourish. Because they can only travel up elevation and eventually run out of mountain, alpine animals are especially vulnerable. Moving targets are being effectively created by climate change. Foresters and conservationists are discussing whether to support tree migration by purposefully planting species in locations where they do not now occur, but where climate projections indicate they may be suited in the future, as trees attempt to track suitable circumstances that are always changing. This brings up difficult issues of what is natural, the dangers of relocating species, and if some species require human-assisted migration to live. Future woods might not resemble today's forests at all. The species that can adapt or move quickly enough to keep up with rapid change determine their composition, not just what currently grows there. Trees around the world are in danger from new diseases and pests. Organisms have migrated over the globe at previously unheard-of speeds due to globalization. Trees are abruptly exposed to pests and diseases with which they have no evolutionary history, after having evolved with a particular suite of insects, fungi, and other species. Devastating outcomes are possible. Dutch elm disease, which was brought on by another Asian fungus that was dispersed by beetles, killed millions of elms throughout Europe and North America, while American chestnuts, which were once the most common trees in eastern woods, were effectively eradicated by chestnut blight, an Asian fungus. North America's ash trees are being destroyed by the Asian beetle known as the emerald ash borer. The West Coast is seeing an increase in sudden oak death. By eradicating once common species, these invasive pests and diseases have the power to drastically alter the composition of forests. Quarantines, insecticides, and biological control have all been used, with varying degrees of effectiveness. Some trees are being replaced by tolerant species or cultivated to be more resistant. However, the issue persists since new invasive species are continuously introduced, concealed in cargo, plants, and wood products. The issue is made worse by climate change since warmer winters enable pests to thrive in areas where they were previously restricted by cold. Our familiar woods are under attack from species that view them as resources to be used, rather than as ecosystems to be a part of. Vigilance against invisible threats that can spread more quickly than we can react is now necessary for forest protection. To combat the damaging effects of diseases and pests, scientists are trying to create trees that are immune to these conditions. Researchers are attempting to create resistant tree species. This has required decades of breeding for American chestnuts, involving the crossing of blight-resistant Asian chestnuts with surviving American trees, followed by a backcross to restore American traits while maintaining resistance. The objective is to create a tree that possesses the genes for blight resistance, but is essentially an American chestnut in look and genetics. For other species, similar efforts are still in progress. Traditional breeding, which takes generations, is used in certain attempts. Some use genetic engineering to introduce particular resistant genes. There is hope for the restoration of destroyed trees thanks to this technology. However, they also bring up issues. Is it possible to recover what has been lost? Or will the new trees be essentially different, even though they are similar? Is it appropriate and safe to genetically modify forest trees? Or does it constitute an intolerable interference with natural processes? The arguments are intricate, striking a balance between worries about unforeseen repercussions and the desire to preserve species. It is obvious that failure to take action will result in the complete extinction of these species. Future forests might have trees that resemble their predecessors, but have subtle genetic changes that enable them to withstand dangers that their predecessors were unable to. It is an attempt to preserve at least a portion of what would otherwise be completely gone. The frequency and intensity of forest fires are increasing. Forest fires are becoming more intense and frequent in many areas due to drought, climate change, and previous fire suppression that allowed fuel to build up. Ancient forests have been destroyed, trees that have evolved to withstand fire have been killed, and enormous amounts of carbon have been released as a result of the recent, unprecedentedly intense megafires in California, Australia, the Amazon, and other places. At the same time, these flames are altering the climate and the environment, generating feedback loops in which the carbon released by the fire heats the earth and raises the risk of future fires. Following significant fires, some forests are not recovering and are instead turning into grasslands or shrublands. As landscapes that define regions and sustain communities are altered, there is not only an ecological loss, but also a cultural and spiritual one. Although climate change is making conditions more intense, fire management is changing to place more focus on controlled burns and allowing natural fires to burn under the right circumstances. Millions of people are impacted by the dense smoke from these fires, which can lead to health issues even far from the flames. In some areas, the ash-filled air and orange skies of fire season have become the new normal. Fires that no adaptation can endure are now threatening trees that have stood for generations. Whether existing forests survive or are replaced by something fundamentally new will depend on how we manage forests, fire, and climate in the years to come. Although there are obstacles, reforestation initiatives give optimism. Massive forestry initiatives worldwide seek to mitigate climate change, restore forests to degraded areas, and plant billions of trees. Though they confront many obstacles, these initiatives are hopeful and have the potential to be successful. Inadequate care, bad soil, or drought causes many newly planted trees to die within the first few years. The simple part is planting, making it more difficult to survive. Even if they do make it through, monoculture plantations lack the ecological functions and biodiversity of natural forests. The most effective reforestation protects areas, permits natural regeneration, and uses planting to hasten the process. Because locals need incentives to conserve young forests, community involvement is essential. In the absence of their assistance, planted trees can be felled for firewood or cleared for farming. Future climate change must be taken into account for reforestation. Planting plants that are not only suitable to the current environment, but also have a chance of surviving in the conditions that will exist in 50 or 100 years. Reforestation is taking place successfully in spite of obstacles. Through preservation and restoration, Brazil's Atlantic forest, which was once only a small percentage of its former size, is gradually growing again. Large-scale tree planting initiatives in China have significantly increased the amount of forest cover. These achievements demonstrate that, with perseverance, adaptive management, and persistent effort, degraded areas can recover and revert to forests. Restoring a forest takes decades, and trees grow slowly. However, if we put our minds to it, the task can succeed. We can learn how to take care of forests from indigenous land management. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples have practiced sustainable forest management, frequently satisfying their needs while preserving and even improving biodiversity. Mosaic landscapes with a high degree of diversity were produced by traditional methods such as selective harvesting, controlled burning, and the preservation of culturally significant species. In reality, many woods that are regarded as virgin wilderness are the product of centuries of human control. Forests frequently deteriorate when native populations are driven off their lands or are unable to carry out traditional management practices. It is becoming more widely acknowledged that conservation requires acknowledging indigenous land rights and promoting traditional management techniques. The conservation results of indigenous domains are frequently superior to those of government-managed protected areas. This acknowledges that societies that have coexisted with certain forests for many generations have created knowledge systems that are appropriate for specific locations, not romantic idealization. They are aware of cycles and relationships that scientific management is only now starting to recognize. Therefore, defending indigenous land rights is not only a question of justice, but also practicality. Indigenous elders possess invaluable wisdom. Every elder who dies without passing on their wisdom is a loss as great as a library being destroyed. The best hope for forests is to combine scientific methods with traditional ecological understanding, fusing more general scientific knowledge with long-term local knowledge. Tree reflections. Every tree is both commonplace and extraordinary. Walking through a forest is like being surrounded by everyday wonders that we fail to see. Every tree is a feat of engineering, a biological factory that produces sugar from sunlight, splits water, and absorbs carbon from the air, all the while influencing the climate and sustaining ecosystems. However, they are also merely trees that we hardly notice. Trees' strength lies in this fusion of the commonplace and the remarkable. They serve as a reminder that there is wonder everywhere. The complexity of a single leaf is as remarkable in the backyard maple as it is in the old redwood. Its cell layers are structured exactly to absorb light. Sugars and water are delivered by its veins. Depending on the situation, its stomata open and close. Add thousands of leaves to it. Add the intricacy of wood, bark, and roots. Think about the collaborations between bacteria and fungi. The decades or centuries of growth, the animals that rely on the tree. And each tree turns into a world, a complexity that we can study for the rest of our lives without becoming tired. However, they are also merely trees that stand motionless, offering freely and without asking. We are encouraged to view things differently by this duality, to understand that the mundane is miraculous and that, if we stop to look, there are wonders in every instant. In a world full of impatience, trees teach patience. Trees provide a different model in a society that is fixated on speed and immediate outcomes. They take years or decades to achieve maturity and grow slowly. They take their time. When an oak tree is planted today, it will take 20 years for it to bear large acorns, 50 years for it to reach maturity, and even after 100 years, it will continue to produce more. Although this long-term outlook seems alien to contemporary life, it is crucial for dealing with long-term issues. Thinking over decades and centuries is necessary to address environmental challenges such as biodiversity loss and climate change. Trees naturally think in this way, but human organizations based on election cycles and quarterly revenues are challenged by it. Our perception of time can be rebalanced by spending time among trees, particularly old ones. Their sluggish growth serves as a reminder that significant tasks require time. It is impossible to rush certain values. It takes millennia to grow a forest, not just 1 year or even 10. It takes trust in the future to plant a tree. An understanding that our efforts will continue to help others long after we are gone. We may discover solutions to our issues that short-term thinking is unable to offer if we learn to think patiently and long-term. A forest's silence is alive with unseen activity. When a forest is isolated from highways and people, it can appear to be quite peaceful. This silence, however, is not emptiness. Roots are developing beneath the surface. Nutrient exchange occurs among fungi. Nitrogen is being fixed by bacteria. Numerous invertebrates are breaking down organic substances in the soil. Birds are foraging in the canopy. There are pollinating insects. Leaves are utilizing photosynthesis. Water is transpired by trees. Moisture is drawn up from depths by their hydraulic systems and released into the atmosphere. The network is carrying chemical messages, alerts for insect attacks and resource sharing across interconnected trees. All of this takes place in a rather quiet environment, free from the cacophony that is typical of human activities. The job of the forest is largely silent. Life's fundamental functions occur without warning. This imparts a lesson about importance and worth. Not every important task is loud. A lot of important things happen in silence. The woodland doesn't promote its significance. It just keeps growing, providing and sustaining itself year after year, century after century. In a society where loudness and visibility are valued more and more, woods serve as a reminder that quiet perseverance counts and that little efforts over time add up to great accomplishments. Trees and people can have a relationship. To connect with trees, you don't have to be a scientist or forester. Tree awareness is something that anybody can develop. Gaining knowledge of species, observing variations in the seasons, interacting with them, selecting a certain tree to visit on a frequent basis and observing it over the course of seasons and years can establish a bond and a familiarity that grows stronger with time. Its buds appear in the spring, and you can see how its leaves change in the fall. Check out the bird nesting spots in its branches. In a sense, this attention is mutual. The tree is unaware of you, but by observing it, you become more conscious and receptive to the cycles of nature. A new kind of relationship, one based on investment and care, is formed when a tree is planted. Seeing something you planted flourish builds a relationship over time. The tree takes on a personal meaning. Not just any tree, but the tree you created, your tree. Trees can be found even in urban areas where the majority of people reside. Learn about your neighborhood's street trees, observing which species do well and which do not, seeing who makes use of them. All of this establishes a bond. Other than maybe some protection and occasional attention, trees don't need much from humans. They give their presence, their services, and their peaceful companionship in exchange. Everyone is eligible for the relationship, merely requesting attention and the readiness to appreciate and acknowledge what is already there everywhere. Aiming for the heavens. Concluding remarks. One of the most calming sounds in nature is the rustle of leaves. The sound of wind rustling leaves has a profoundly soothing quality. It is a complicated rustling rather than a single sound. A steady yet ever-changing sound is produced by many leaves moving slightly out of phase. The sounds produced by various trees vary. Aspens provide a characteristic shimmer because of their flat stems, which let leaves flutter in the smallest breeze. When wind passes over pine needles, the whoosh becomes gentler. A deeper rustle is produced by the thicker and stiffer oak leaves. Natural white noise. These noises are diverse and varied enough to be engaging without being overpowering. Natural sounds, such as rustling leaves, have been shown to lower tension and encourage relaxation. Our reactions to these sounds are primitive in some way. Perhaps an evolutionary legacy from ancestors that interpreted these noises as signals of resources, safety, and shelter. Or maybe it's just that the sound is more lovely, natural, and alive than mechanical noises. For whatever reason, it is commonly acknowledged that it is soothing to lie beneath trees and listen to the movement of leaves in the breeze. All we have to do is stop and listen. It's a free kind of therapy that can be found anywhere trees grow. Trees serve as a bridge between the past and the future. You are surrounded by a live link to the past when you stand next to an old tree. Generations before you were born, the tree was a seedling. It has seen history that you can only learn about in books. Its rings document years of plenty and drought that no human can recall. Touching such a tree is a direct connection to the past, not through a paper or artifact, but through a live individual who was there. Trees also serve as a link to the future. A tree planted today will probably outlast you and continue to flourish for decades or even centuries after you are gone. People you will never meet will be shaded by it. Give animals a place to live in a world you won't see. We are placed in a larger timeline, a part of a narrative that goes well beyond individual lives by this simultaneous connection to the past and the future. It implies that our deeds have consequences that last beyond our lifetimes, that our actions toward trees have an impact on a future we won't live in. This viewpoint reminds us that we are a part of something bigger and longer than ourselves, and that our decisions have an impact on the course of time, being carried in the growth rings of trees we may never see reach maturity. It is simultaneously empowering and humbling. This brings our trip through the world of trees to a gentle end, dear listener. From the mangroves standing in seawater to the ancient bristle cones clinging to mountain peaks. From the whirling leaves catching sunlight far above to the enormous networks of fungi and roots beneath the soil. Together, we have explored both real and fictional woodlands. Growth rings have shown us the patience of centuries, felt how fungus and roots were interwoven with life, examined the relationships that exist between trees and all the animals that rely on them. Trees serve as a constant reminder of the immensity, patience, and interconnectedness of life. They demonstrate to us the vastness of time as well as the intricate webs of relationships that bind all living things. Each tree in the sky is a present. Every forest is a treasure. Every leaf is a tiny biological wonder that we should never stop admiring, even though we may take it for granted. Allow your breathing to settle into a comfortable rhythm as you lie here. Picture yourself sleeping under a massive tree. Imagine the rough bark on your back, the gentle rustle of leaves above, and the dappled shade sweeping across your closed eyes. Feel as though the earth is alive beneath you, with roots extending through the dirt and reaching other trees everywhere via unseen threads. Take in the earthy and leafy aroma. For many generations, the scent of the forest has symbolized human safety and a place to call home. Listen to the wind whispering through the branches, the deep silence of living things at work, the distant chirp of birds. It all flows into silence, tranquility, and relaxation. Innumerable generations have been carried by the trees before us, and innumerable generations will follow. Like day giving way to darkness, neither their narrative nor ours is complete. Every conscious idea slowly fades into slumber. As soon as you're ready, you can watch the following video if you're still awake. However, if your eyes are getting tired, allow the soft presence of trees to envelop you and gently lead you into silence, into sleep, into the timeless and enormous silence where the forest guards. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and drift into slumber, into tranquility, into the peaceful green world where trees stand as guards and time advances slowly like the development of wood, steady and sure and forever. Good night.